a microscope, barely visible. A human hair is one of the smallest things the human eye can see. Imagine, though, if you could shrink yourself until that hair looked as thick as your arm. What would you see? The hair on flying legs would look like huge spikes. The fly would look like a monster with giant eyes. That's the close-up view a microscope allows. The first simple microscope. For thousands of years, people have wanted to take a closer look at their world. The ancient Greeks used glass bowls filled with water to make objects look larger. The Romans discovered that glass that was thick in the big looked bigger. There was first magnifying glass. People learned how to make better glass lenses in Europe in the 1600s. With that discovery, the microscope was invented. At first, the microscope was just a sort of fancy magnifying glass. Most magnifying glass only make things look about 5 to 10 times larger in size. That was the power of the first simple microscope, compound microscope. Early microscope users found that they could put two magnifying glasses in a row. The second lens magnified the image from the first lens. This made the image look even bigger. With the two lenses working together in a single microscope, the compound microscope was born. Today, compound microscopes can make objects look 1,500 times bigger, modified 20 to 30 times. One of the early microscope users was Robert Hooke. Hooke was one of the first people to take careful notes that it was through a microscope. He published his notes in a book filled with drawings. Hooke's book had close-up view to loss and a flea. He drew the eyes of a fly in a greater detail than anyone had ever seen before. Hooke also sketched part of plants and seeds. When he looked at a piece of cork under a microscope, he discovered that it was made of tiny chambers. He called those chambers cells. Those chamber cells, over time, were cells became to used up for the tiny building blocks of all living things, magnified 50 to 200 times. Historians believe that Hooke's book inspired an, another early microscope user, Antony van Antony van Leeuwenhoek, trained um, Hooke. Van Leeuwenhoek was quite mechanic, not a trained scientist. However, he used magnifying glasses to take a close look at the fabric he brought and sold. After he saw Hooke's drawings, Van Leeuwenhoek started making lenses of his own. Van Leeuwenhoek discovered a way to create better lenses. He learned to make microscopes that magnified objects more than 200 times. Using his microscope, Van Leeuwenhoek discovered tiny life forms living in lakes water. These life forms are too small to see with the naked eye. Before Van Leeuwenhoek times, no one knew there were such tiny living. Microscopes showed that tiny life forms live everywhere. When things are magnified 200 times, a person can see many things that are invisible to naked eye. Even something as simple as sand looks different under a microscope. A normal-sized sand looks ordinary and plain. Under magnification, it's clear that beach sand contains with tiny shells, rocks and coral. Magnified 200 to 1500 times. Early compound microscope has some problems. The lenses could make things look blurry and stretched. They also changed the colors and the edges of what was being seen. It was difficult to tell what was real and what was caused by the lens. In the early 1800s, a scientist named Joseph Jackson Lister invented a new type of lens. This lens got rid of stretching and color changes, and made microscope more powerful and reliable. As a result, microscope allowed new discovery in science and medicine. In mid-1800s, Louis Pasteur discovered the tiny life form in the air could cause mold to spoil. The improved microscope allowed doctors to see germs in the bodies of sick people. This discovery completely changed medicine. The early compound microscope also led to discovery that no two snowflakes are alike. Wilson Bentley was known as Snowflakes Bentley for his work with snowflakes. He because a camera to take picture with his microscope. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, he took photographs for more than 5,000 snowflakes. Microscopes showed that some things in nature form special shapes called crystals, salt crystal or cube, and like buildings block, table sugar forms crystal that are slanted to each at each end at the strongest than salt crystal. Saying the word tiny detail can help people understand how things work. A burst, for example, a man named George de Mastral saw the bird stuck to his clothing. After he walked in the field, he took a closer look at birds under the microscope. He saw that they had tiny loops that caught the loops in the fabric of his pants. The master worked to copy the design of birds using fabrics. The result was Velcro. Velcro was is made of two pieces of fabric. One piece was covered in thousands of tiny hooks. The other is covered in thousands of tiny loops. The hooks and loops let one or two pieces of fabric weave together. Magnified 1 million times because of way light works. There is a limit to how much a compound microscope can magnify objects. During the past century, though, scientists have created a microscope that doesn't use light. One such microscope uses energy called electrons. Ultron's microscope provides the greatest magnification of any type of microscope, manufactured up to 1 million times. Conclusion: as the microscope has become more powerful, we have learned many new things about our world. Microscopes have led to discoveries in nearly every area of science.